which is one of my favorite ways to garden in Prescott, Arizona. Because if you've ever tried to dig in the soil, it's a challenge. So container gardening is just so super easy. Easy to maintain, easy to water, easy to plant. I think kind of raised beds, kind of the same concept. Super easy to take care of. You've got a nicer soil in them, especially for some of the plants that we're going to be talking about today. So container gardening, I'll kind of go over the basics with you. This is, if you guys have a question, just raise your hand. We're super informal here. So first thing with container gardening is the pot, the container, the most important thing. So you can plant in plastic, terracotta, ceramic, wood, concrete. You can use all of those mediums for planting. The thing to think about is what you're trying to achieve, what you're trying to look for, how frequently you want to renew the pot, that kind of thing. So I like ceramics just because they last forever. So the ceramics that we bring in for our store are the high-fired, heavy. Excuse me, I'm gonna take that radio off because I don't need people talking in my ear. So the high-fired ceramics are nice because they can take our winters and they're not going to crack, they're not going to flake, they're going to really hold up in the winter. The problem with like the Mexican pottery and the terracottas, they really can't take our freeze thaws. So, you got soil in there, it freezes, it expands, and then it shrinks down. And that's how you get that flaking. You get cracks in the pots. So the Talavera and the terracottas, not as good. They do make some freeze or frost-proof terracottas. If you like the look of terracotta and you want to go with that, get the freeze-proof ones, the frost-proof ones. They will hold up so much better for you. Plastic, I have no problem with plastic. It holds up well. They've come out with some really new, nice plastics that I think are quite attractive. Nice thing about plastic is it tends to be not as heavy. So by the time I fill this thing with dirt and plants, it's going to be heavy. I'm not going to just be picking it up and moving it around the yard. I'm going to have the spot where it needs to be, and I'm probably going to leave it there unless I got a dolly, to move stuff around with. So that's a negative with the ceramic. Wood, I like, especially in some of the more, forested areas, the look of wood, the whiskey barrels. The problem with them is they do deteriorate. After, I would say, 4 to 5 years, you start seeing them kind of crack, the wood shrinks, it gets discolored. So that's just something to think about with them. It's not a bad thing, it's just longevity of it. So that's your pots. The main thing about any pot you use is making sure it has a drain hole. You've got to have drain holes in your pots. Without drain holes, you have a bathtub. And most plants, almost every plant, really needs some drainage. You need to have good drainage in there. So some of the wooden ones, they kind of have their own drainage because they got the slats in between them. Plastic, sometimes I've seen a lot of plastics without any drain holes. If that's the situation, get out that drill and drill some holes in there. And not just itty bitty holes. We want some good sized holes. Drainage is super important. Sometimes with a lot of my pots, because what happens is once you get them full of dirt and you've planted them and you've been watering them a while, that drain hole will get a little plugged. So it doesn't hurt to have this pot raised up a little bit, whether you put some pebbles under it, a brick, pot feet, that kind of stuff. So you're just raising it a little bit so that it does two things. It helps with that air circulation because we need air moving around it, and it helps with that drainage. So it might be something you think about if you're using a saucer, or even if you just have it on gravel or dirt, try to put something under it to lift. It doesn't have to be big, just a little bit to allow for that drainage and that air circulation. Then we move into potting soil. So potting soil is very important. Yes, sir. Oh, okay. Sure, sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So his question is metal containers, which I didn't think about metal, but yes. So especially like the galvanized containers, a lot of people use now kind of almost as a raised bed. I'm totally fine with. I think they work fine. I don't think you get a lot of leaching, even if you're going to grow veggies in there. I wouldn't worry about it. I think you'd be fine. Some of the smaller metal pots thing to think about is when we're 100 degrees, that pot's going to get pretty toasty. So depending on what you have in it, it may not be real happy in there. I think your bigger tubs, you're fine. But when you get into smaller things, I would take that into consideration just for the heat of the summer. It may be fine. You just may end up having to water a little more, or just make sure you're putting plants in there that really want a hot spot, lantana, things like that, things that can take that heat. Okay, any more questions? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, you can use like a diamond drill bit and drill the holes in it. You just got to do it carefully. But yeah, we've done that. Most of our pots you'll find already have the holes in them. Very rarely do we have a pot without a hole, which is more of a slip pot. So a slip pot, you're using it as a decorative container, but you're slipping a plastic pot or something in there. So you can do that, but there again, you still have to watch it because you still got a bathtub, right? It's still not draining. It drains into this pot. So sometimes you have to pull out that plastic pot, pour out the water. You just got to watch your watering on that.
Just food for thought. Concrete drill bit from Depot.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah, so you can find inexpensive drill bits and do it. Just do it carefully and slowly. Okay, so we'll move on to soils. So your soil is beside your pot, kind of one of the more important things because that's what your plants are going to root out into. So you want a good soil. Our Waters potting soil is a great soil, works for all the stuff we're talking about today. If you were going to do a pot with sedums, succulents, yuccas, cactus, we make a specific cactus mix. And that's what I would use, is a cactus mix for those. So our potting soil we had developed years ago by a guy who was an actual grower. So he wanted a good soil that you could use to allow things to drain because especially when you're growing, you need good drainage so you don't rot out those roots. But it also has to hold moisture, right? So it's kind of a balance there in what you're doing. So our potting soil has a lot of peat moss in it. It's got perlite in it. It has, a lot of people ask about there's like little twiggy, sticky things in there. That's what gives you the drainage. That's what allows it to not compact so hard that the water doesn't penetrate through. So that gives you the drainage. The perlite gives you the moisture, helps hang on to that moisture. The thing about perlite to remember is if perlite goes really dry, like you forgot to water for 4 or 5 days, you have to slowly rehydrate it. So you water it again, you water it again, because what happens is that perlite kind of dries there and then the water just goes right around it and it's not penetrating in the roots. So if you've got a dry pot, it's more than just throwing water on it. You got to slowly rehydrate it. It's not just a one-time walk away and think you've done it. kind of water it, walk away, come back and water it again. So you're just kind of slowly rehydrating it so it'll hold that moisture again. There's also perlite in here. Is there anything I'm missing, Ken? There's a starter 555. No. Okay. Yeah. So it's also got a light starter fertilizer in there too, which is kind of nice. So the other question people ask a lot is, should I put rocks in the bottom to help with drainage? The answer is no, don't do that. You just make your life easy and just go with the potting soil. They've done studies where the rocks actually hang on to the moisture. So it really is not doing what you think it does. Plus, I've seen rocks clog the drain holes. So you don't need rocks. I'm not even sure where that came from.
You have a really big planter and you want to not have to put that
Sure.
dirt in it. That's where I use rocks.
Sure. Yeah. So her statement was, on a really big pot, she doesn't want to fill the whole thing. She's put rocks in it, which I think maybe is fine as long because they're probably bigger rocks. You know, if you had to move that pot, you're not going to be moving it. But empty 2-liter bottles, milk jugs, things like that. They're a little lighter. That's probably what I would do. But I also want to make sure I'm getting a good amount of soil in there. If you're doing a shrub or a tree in a pot, just do soil, no matter how big the pot is, because you want that to grow out. Yes.
So the whole width, anything?
I don't cover it with anything usually. What you can use, which is actually very beneficial, is a piece of screening. So like house screens are used for, but they're plastic mesh. Yeah. Needlepoint. Thank you. You can tell I'm not very good at that. But yeah, something that will allow drainage, but also kind of keep that drain hole from getting clogged up is an excellent idea. Sometimes I forget to do that, but really you should. It would be very beneficial for you. Coffee filter? It doesn't break down?
Soil swells up and clogs a hole. It doesn't matter.
I like the screening, but yeah. Okay, so we're going to use our potting soil. Like I said, if you're doing succulents, things like that, agaves, use a cactus mix. Occasionally, I have if I've had cactus mix, and I'll do a layer of that at the bottom because it's cactus mix is pumice and sand. It's very well draining. So occasionally I'll do a layer of that on the bottom and then do my potting soil on top. So filling your pot. This is where I find a lot of people kind of make a bit of a mistake. Sorry about that. So I'm kind of a messy container gardener. Oh, thank you. So if you're like me and you're kind of messy and you like to keep things neat, you could put a tarp down or some plastic. By the time I get done here, there'll be dirt everywhere. So when you fill your pot, what I find is a lot of people don't fill it enough to begin with. They keep the level way down low because they're like, oh, I'm going to put plants in there. What happens when you do that is by the time you get it planted and watered, the soil shrinks down, and all of a sudden you can't see your plants because they're hidden by the pot. So there's no harm in starting high. If you need to remove some soil while you're going, you can do that. But if you don't start high enough with enough soil in your pot, what you're going to find is you're planting too far down in that container. And we don't want that. We want to see all the big pretties standing up. So I always make sure I have enough in there. If it looks high to you, you're probably close to where it needs to be. So fill it nice and full. This potting soil today, right now, is pretty moist because we've had rain and these bags have been sitting outside. But if your potting soil is dry, go ahead and get water to it first. You want your potting soil to be moist, not soggy. You don't want to be able to squeeze it and drip water out of it, but you want it to be moist. So if it's dry, I usually get it in there. I pour a little water in and let it sit for a second or two, till it, work it up with my hands, and then see how it feels. So you want nice, moist soil, but you don't want boggy, wet, gross soil. So that's our soil. Any questions on soils? Yes, sir.
Existing pot, we want to put a new plant in it.
Uh-huh.
We need to take out the existing pot, so that it just
Okay.
takes a little bit.
So his question is if he has an existing pot that he's going to be repotting into, replanting into. Sometimes it depends on the size of the pot. So if it's a big pot, you got a little more leeway. If it's a smaller pot, I would just get rid of all the soil and start fresh. If it's a really big pot, make sure you're pulling out all the root bundles. Make sure you get rid of those. If you had a plant in there that was diseased at all, black spot, fungus, mildew, get rid of all the soil, clean the pot with a bleach solution. So start fresh if you've had disease issues. I have no problem using the existing soil, but I definitely add fresh soil to it. And then you kind of try to mix that up. So just your soil base allows for the health of the plants. So if we start off on the wrong foot with bad soil, then you just got issues going there, and who needs that? So this is AquaBoost crystals. This is a polymer that kind of swells up when you water it. It kind of helps give your pot even moisture, so that it's even in this time of year, we don't worry too about much, but if it was June, I'd be worried. So the polymers kind of swell up when water reaches them, and then just slowly release that moisture, throughout the day, throughout the weeks. This also has mycorrhizals in it, which is excellent for root development. Roots want to grow into mycorrhiza colonies. So it just kind of gives your container a good boost and just helps you moderate your watering as well. It does give you directions. And what I tell everybody is more is not better. This is one of those products you follow the amounts it tells you, because when it swells up, if you got too much in there, it's going to start oozing over the side. And you think you've got alien stuff going in there. So always use the amount directed for your AquaBoost crystals. So I get those in there. The next thing I usually put in, there's some dogs walking that way. The next thing I put in is the all-purpose plant food. There again, follow your directions. So you're basically doing a new planting, so don't go crazy. So this is a slow release food. It's not going to burn unless you just use way too much in there. But I throw some of that on top, mix that in. So now I know I've got a good base going. I've got my fertilizer, my AquaBoost, my good potting soil. I'm going to leave that here. And now we're ready to start potting. See, even if I've worked with this for I've just done it a few times, it's already shrunk down like a good inch. I'm going to put a little more in. Mix that up. Now, I meant, before I started all this, to put on some gloves. I'm not I don't like the heavy gardening gloves because they're great if you're pruning, picking stuff up. But if you're just doing stuff like this, I like to feel it, but it gets under my nails and then it never comes out. So you can, I like these little nitro gloves. Ken buys these to work on the cars, automotive stuff, but they work great for planting and they're inexpensive. And when you're done, you just throw them away. So these are great. So planting, so design of your pot. The adage is you need a thriller, you need a filler, you need a spiller. So you've probably heard that. That's the old adage. My theory is, yes, if you like that, do that. If you don't do that. Every potting design is a personal thing. And you got to make it yours. And you've got to like it because you're going to be looking at it. You know, some people like really monochromatic colors. They want them to all be the same. Some people are like, I want every color in the rainbow in there. It's your pot. You can do what you want with your pot. But I'm going to kind of go on the thriller, filler, spiller. We can talk about a few things. So I am also, quite frequently, I will mix perennials and annuals in the same pot. I like, like this is a grass. This is a sedge. It's called the red fox sedge. Great for fall containers. It just looks so pretty. But it's also a year round. It's not going to die off. It's always going to be there. So what I do is I have my pansies and stuff in it now. And then when summer comes and I'm like, oh, I'm ready to switch over, I can put petunias in there, calibrachoas, vincas, marigolds. So I can switch out my color, but I'm keeping a standard thing in the middle there. So I'm not changing that out all the time. So this grass is one of my favorite to use, especially for fall. You can also do, like this is a little Alberta spruce. So if you're thinking fall and Christmas, you could use this in the center and you could put little lights on it for Christmas, make it more decorative. So you can certainly, the Alberta spruce grow really slow, like a 1/4 inch a year. They make great container plants because they're so slow growing. So you can pop one of these in there. It's another option. A kind of out of the box option. So this is Swiss chard. Yes, you can eat it. So this kind of gives you a nice little edible planter. So you could put your Swiss chard in the center. This one's called Bright Lights. And I don't know if you can see, but the stems, they'll be bright red, bright yellow. Some of them, sometimes they turn orange. So just a really cool plant. I love the leaves have the red in them as well. So it kind of gives you a nice color in there. And yes, what you could do is just pluck off your leaves. If you want a little bit of Swiss chard in your salad or on your plate. And then that just makes it produce more. So yes, you can use lettuces. The other, while we're talking about veggies, this is beets. This is the bull's blood beet. I like it because of the color. I don't really like beets, but I like the color of this. So this can make, I'll show you when we go along, but you can also use that as a little filler in there to give yourself some color. I thought I brought up a lettuce, but I didn't. But there's some red lettuces down there. Just some really neat colors and textures that you can use vegetables as well and put it with some pansies and violas, which are also edible. And have a really cool pot that you can nibble from too. So dual purpose. So, but we'll cover more of that later. So yeah, you could do something like Swiss chard. So the concept is you want something tall in the middle because that's going to be your thriller, right? Makes your eye go, ooh, what's that? Draws your eye to it. Snapdragons, another really good one. Snapdragons are a great plant for here. They're kind of a biennial. So they'll live 2 to 3 years, that plant, but they also put off seed. So sometimes you have to be a little careful because you'll have them and all of a sudden you'll have a little snapdragon here, a little snapdragon here, but they're pretty, so who cares? So these will go through the winter just fine. when we're really cold, like January, when it's just cold, they won't necessarily bloom, but the plant itself will be there and be fine. So come March, April, it'll start blooming again. So a nice little plant for that. So those are my thrillers I brought up. There are many, many more. I meant to grab a boxwood and I forgot. I got distracted. So you could use a boxwood, which is another plant that is great for using in the centers because they don't mind being trimmed. You can hedge them back, create balls, triangles, cones, whatever you want with them. So thriller there. Any questions on that?
Hey, Lisa. So the folks online have all the handouts today.
Uh-huh.
We can pass this around.
Okay.
It's, well, bottom. The folks can't hear me online. There's handouts, the 8 garden tips for beginners. That's what she's going over. How to fertilize, because October is the most important season to fertilize. And then we have an exclusive bulb. If you like bulbs, spring bulbs, we picked the top 10 bulbs for the area. Those are coming your way. If you want that emailed to you, dream of it.
Okay. So
there
he's
we go.
sending around a sign-up sheet for handouts for the class. And he
Why didn't
mentioned
that talk to me?
It's not
What's going on?
nobody was.
Huh.
So because he mentioned bulbs, which actually reminded me. So daffodils, tulips, things like that. If you plant your bulbs in your pot with your flowers, which is a perfectly fine thing to do, you'll also get your spring daffodils coming up or your tulips, whatever you put in, hyacinths. So yes, you can plant bulbs in your containers with your flowers. So something to think about for that.
We have some really cool alliums, which is a organic kind of a garlic looking plant. Big purple pom-pom things. Super cool.
Yeah.
That'll look great in a pot.
Mhm. So yeah, something else. Yes. So I would plant my container how I want it to look now. So I wouldn't even consider them as part. They'd probably be part of the filler eventually. But I'm planting for a while. I want my pot to look now through spring. And so your bulbs will come up in the spring and they'll just be an additional blast of, oh, cool, look at that. So,
It's frosting.
Yeah.
Total frosting. It's nothing else,
Yeah.
just frosting.
right. And
There
yeah.
you go.
And you don't have to plant your bulbs very deep. They're usually just under the surface there. So anyway, something to think about. So thriller, filler, spiller. I'm going to use this because I like this. It's one of my favorite grasses. When you pull it out of the pot, you can see how it's just kind of the shape of the pot, right? So we need to loosen it up because we want those roots not just to stay right here. We want them to move out. So we're going to massage the roots, loosen the roots on the sides and the bottom. So you're loosening that up. A lot of people freak out and go, aren't you hurting the plant? No, you're fine. So also when you're designing your pots, the other thing to think of is how you're going to view the pot. If you're going to see it from all sides, I start with my thriller smack dab in the middle. If I'm only going to see it from one side, it's going to be up against a wall. I'm not going to see the back side. Then I plant my thriller towards the back because you're not going to see back. You put your energy and color in the front of it. So I can go around with this one. So this is where you may have to pull out some of that dirt. That's okay. I'd rather have it full than try to add. So you kind of want to get that middle one. It's going to set up a little bit there again because I know that soil is going to shrink down. So it's okay if it's sitting up a little bit to begin with. But I'm not going to have it completely covered by all the potting soil right now because I'm still working. So I've got my thriller in there. So now I'm at my filler. So there's a lot of different things you can do for filler. chrysanthemums, deal for here. So we could go with the chrysanthemums. I brought a couple different colors because I wasn't sure what I was going to like. So
Both
the other,
of them. Both.
so sometimes, before I actually, especially when I'm here at the garden center picking out my plants, I'll put them on the top of the cart and see how they look together. Also, before you can pull them out of the bucket, before you fully plant them, see if you like that combo. Is it working for you? Or you're like, what was I thinking? So you can do, I think I kind of like the yellow because it's a nice contrasting color to it. I thought I was going to like this, but I think it's too much of the same color. So like I said, it's all personal, right? We all get to pick our own colors. So I've got 2 of the chrysanthemums up here. If I was doing this like real, and I was doing it all the way around, I'd probably do 3. Just because I like odd numbers. So there again, loosen it up. Some of these on the bottom, you can see how tight. I'm going to let that pass. Okay. We'll see. Sometimes it stops with 1. Sometimes there's like 10 that come out. So you can see how kind of root banded it's here on the bottom. What I'm going to do is actually just pull these roots off. I'm going to make sure these are nice and loose. And I'm going to stick them where I want it. There again, it's not going to be completely covered by dirt to begin with, but that's okay. We're going to fill back in later. Here comes the rain. Yay.
Notice you got the crown above the wind.
Right.
Or
It is intentional because I know once I've watered this about 5 times, it's going to shrink about that much more. So that way I'm keeping my plants up where I can see them and enjoy them, not sunk down in the pot where I can't see what I've got. So yeah, I always start up a little higher. Sometimes I have to be a little more careful when I water the first few times because it'll just go whoop, like this. So I just water real slowly, let it penetrate. But in the long run, it's a much better way to go. So our fillers, the other one you can think about, so marigolds, they are really nice fall kind of color, those pumpkin-y, orangey fall colors. Will it go through the winter? No. But it'll probably last till the end of November, maybe even the first part of December, especially around here. So it's something you could throw in for color in there. And since I don't have my 3rd marigold, I'm just going to stick it here. The other nice thing about not covering everything up with dirt right away is you can move it around pretty easily if you want to. So those are my fillers. So I got my filler. I'm filling that space in. Now I'm going to do my spillers. So spillers technically drape over the pot, but to me they're also something that fills in this lower part as well. And you got options with that. So this is Dusty Miller. This is a great plant to use in with other things. It actually does a really nice job of offsetting colors. That gray kind of white offsets the other colors. So I use Dusty Miller a lot. It's also goes through the winter just fine. It also goes through the summer just fine. Sometimes you have to kind of trim it back, pull some out, because it's a very happy plant. It does very well in our environment. But super easy to use in your containers, and it takes a multitude of seasons, of temperatures. I could use alyssum. Alyssum is very pretty. It'll fill in. It'll start to drape over the edge. It's a good soaker.
It's good. Very good.
So yeah, you could definitely use alyssum in there as well. Makes a real pretty kind of drape over the edge kind of thing. This is ornamental kale. So ornamental kale and cabbage, they are, you could eat them, but they're not like you want to eat them. They're not, they don't have that nice taste to them. They're a little bitter. Sometimes you'll see them used in restaurants as garnish because they look really pretty as garnish. You could use that too on your Thanksgiving turkey, but it's not particularly edible. You know who does love it though? Javelinas. Javelinas love kale. If you have a lot of javelina in your area, don't use the kale. Just from experience, I can tell you that. Dusty Miller, you're pretty safe with. They don't really like the Dusty Miller. So if you've got a lot of critters coming in your yard, be careful what you're planting. But the kale just gets prettier. As we get cooler, it gets more purples and pinks and colors to it. So very, very pretty to use in there. There again, just how do you want it to look? We could also stick a few pansies in there, most definitely. I'm going to go with this because I've got so much yellow kind of going right now. So I want to bring another little color in there. So this is a pansy. This will go through fall, it will go through winter, and it will go through spring. Pansies and violas are just happy little campers until it gets hot. And then by the time mid-May, in May, they're like, yeah, I'm done. I'm done. You can move it into a shadier spot in the yard and they'll actually go through. But they don't like the heat, but they love the cold. They can have snow sitting on them and they don't care. You know, the snow will melt and they'll look a little, but the next sunny day and they're out and their little faces are up and they're just happy as can be. Flower to them. Violas have a little smaller flower. Both of them do wonderfully here. So I'm going to throw a pansy in there. I only bring one color up. Darn it.
How many
Here's an
plants
orange
should
one.
you have in a container?
How many plants should you have in a container? As many as you want. As many as you can shove in there is my theory. I like my containers to look pretty instantly. Yeah.
Is it possible to overcrowd the container?
I suppose it's possible, but hard to do from what I've seen. Most people think, oh, I'm going to plant 3 things and I'm going to wait for it to fill in. Why do that to yourself? Plant it full and enjoy it. The thing with these little 4-inch, once I kind of get those roots off of there, see how skinny I can make that? So I'll turn that one in here.
That's a
This is a pansy. It's a orange pansy. Yeah. So those are kind of mine. So I've got my fillers going in. I'm kind of filling in there. If I got really tight on room and I still wanted to squeeze more in, that's where a 6-pack's really helpful because you can just pop that little guy out. And he's even skinnier. So I could take him and go, oh, I need some more color right here. I'll just pop it in there. So you can use different sizes to fill in more color. I'm just going to stick him right there. So other fillers. So if you're looking for things that'll drape over the edge this time of year, the alyssum will it will soften the edge most definitely. So you could definitely use alyssum for that. You can use vinca. So this is a perennial. It can get a little aggressive. I use it, but I also come through and yank it out periodically just to keep it in check. But it can be used. Same with ivy. Ivy is a nice little perennial. It can get a little aggressive, but I just come through when I think like it's taken over too much, and I'll just pull it out by its roots and put it somewhere else in the yard. But these make nice fillers.
Along that same line, are there any plants that you avoid putting in pots because they will just take over and sprout out everything?
Mint. Vinca can do that. You just have to remember to keep it in check. Same with ivy. Mints, oreganos, thymes. They can get pretty aggressive in containers. Most of your other stuff, your flowering things, I don't typically worry about too much. They don't get too aggressive. Another trick, I'll show you with the Alyssa in my pot, since I don't have any back here. If you're wanting something to spill, looks like it's spilling over the edge, the angle of how you plant it can make a big difference. So instead of planting it just like this, I can plant it at an angle, so you actually see more of it, and it's going to drape over faster. You could even do it with kale. So just remember, you can plant things kind of going more at an angle. It gives you a better look. It softens the edge. Can you guys see it? I've got this big thing blocked. So you're kind of, wanting to aesthetically make the pot pleasing to yourself and how you view it. You don't have to have something big and tall in the middle if you don't want to. If you want it to kind of all just be the same with some things weeping over around the edge, you can do that too. No, there's not going to be the designer police come out and get you. The best advice I can give you is make that pot full. Give it a really pretty start. You don't want to have to wait 3 months to have a beautiful pot. Start with a beautiful pot. So once we've got everything kind of in there where we want it, so this is not exactly, because I would probably, there again, I like threes, so I would have 3 of this color in here. But I didn't bring up 3, so I only got what? But I would like to do 3s in a bigger pot. Again, it's probably just me and my idiosyncrasies. But once you kind of get everything where you think you want it to be, you're ready to fill in with your soil. Use my mess. So usually I have my soil like in a big tub. So you pull from it. It's also good to put in here and kind of, if you're going to be mixing into it, throwing your soil in here and mixing your additives in at that time is a good way to go too. But since I don't have that, I'm just going to pull from the bag. So we're going to start filling in those air pockets now, those little spaces we've created. So I just take extra soil. I just kind of pat it down in there. I'm not punching it down, I'm tapping it down lightly to fill the air pockets, because I want there to be lots of soil for those roots to grow into. And this is where you want, that's where these gloves are nice, because I can feel for any air pockets. I feel them in there. Whereas if I had the big heavy gloves on, I wouldn't be able to feel them as well necessarily. So you just go along. And it's okay if you're mushing them in a little bit, like I was pushing this one in. That's okay. You do that. I'm going to fill in those pockets. You just kind of keep going around the pot until you get all those little air pockets filled in. The other tip I would say is when you pull your plants out of the bucket, out of the pot, if it feels dry or it looks dry, give it some water before you plant it. You don't want to put a dry plant into your pot. You don't want it soggy wet, but you don't want it bone dry either. Make sure it's got some moisture to it. Sorry, I'm trying to talk. So yeah, just go around, fill all your little spots in. You get where you're good. You're gonna get dirt on the plants. That's okay. You just kind of shake it off later. So you make sure it's nice filled in. Now you can see from my pot how high my soil is, right? And this is at a really good level. Because even though it's sitting up a little higher than some of you might feel comfortable with, when it compresses down, it's the plants are still going to be at a good level for you to enjoy. So once I got everything kind of popped in there the way I want it, I'm happy with it. If you're going to be moving, what I usually recommend with these bigger pots is plant them where you're going to keep them, because they get really heavy. If you can't do that, you're going to move it. Do not water it before you move it. Wait until you move it, then water it. Otherwise, you're going to be calling some movers in with some dollies to help you with that. So once you got everything potted in, you've got it where you want it in your yard or your landscape, then you're going to water. Nice little watering can. Couple of products to go with that. So this is our Root and Grow. This is a product we use with new transplants. It works on trees, shrubs. It works on plants that are stressed out. It's a nice organic product, excellent to use. It helps with the stress. It encourages root formation. So we want these little guys to root out as quickly as possible. So using your Root and Grow is really, really important. It is an organic product, really cool product. It looks funky. Looks very funky. It's a brown kind of liquid. So don't let it freak you out, but just concentrated. So you're going to put it, I think it's two, read the directions, Lisa. 2 ounces per gallon of water. So the thing with the Root and Grow, it's not a one-time and done. I like to use it every 2 or 3 weeks. When I start seeing things really flush out and know that they're really well rooted in there, then I kind of stop using it. But it's a great starter to use on your new pots. Once things are flushed out and looking good, this is flower power. So this is to keep things blooming. So we want to get as much bloom out of these pansies and mums as we can possibly get, because we want to enjoy them. So the flower power is a water soluble. Here again, you mix it in your watering can. Use it every 2 weeks. This is a 12-48-8. So that 48 is the phosphorus. So phosphorus helps things bloom. It also helps things root. So it's a really good product for your containers to use. You're going to use this every 2 weeks. It just keeps things blooming. And I can tell you it works. I have a calibrachoa that I've had all summer in a pot. I don't know if you guys know calibrachoas. But a lot of times they'll just take a break and they just sit there with a green plant for a while. We use this religiously every 2 weeks. Those plants have not stopped blooming all summer long, and they look fabulous. People doubt me on this, and then they come back and they buy 2 of them. So it really is a good product. It will hold. It's a crystal, kind of granular. If you don't use it all in one season, store it in your garage. You can use it next season. So this is a really good thing to use every 2 weeks on your plants. That's what keeps your pot healthy and looking good. Pardon? Yes, this is water soluble. So if there's a little scoop in there, you just put that in your bucket, fill it with water, off you go. Any questions on anything? Yeah.
I have a breezeway shelter but it's
Uh-huh.
still outdoors.
Uh-huh.
Will something like this be safe out there, or what do you bring it into inside?
No. So what I planted today, other than the marigolds maybe, will all go through the winter. So the moms will bloom, bloom, bloom. Then they go out of bloom, and then they go dormant in the winter. They'll go to sleep. Sometimes I like the mums for fall, but when they're done blooming, sometimes I'll pull them out and then I'll put more pansies in. Your grass, your pansies, your violas, dusty miller, ornamental kale, even your Swiss chard, snapdragons, all of that stuff will go through the season. It'll go through spring. And then summer hits and we go, I'm done with that. And then we put our geraniums in and our petunias and our calabacoas. This is where that grass, so I would change out my seasonal color. I would leave my grass and I would just change my color out around that. So that's kind of a nice advantage to using something that is permanent in the middle, whether it's a little tree, grass, boxwood. You're always just changing the outside of it. You're not replanting the whole thing every time. So shade's a little trickier this time of year, just because it's harder to find things that bloom. You could still use your pansies, your violas, dusty miller, alyssum. You may not. That's where I really use my flower power, and because they're without as much light, they're not going to want to bloom as prolifically. But if it's bright light, they'll be fine. If it's deep dark shade, put ivy in. I think of.
Yeah, that's more what I'm doing.
Uh-huh.
Which I love because
Yeah. Oh, okay. Sure. Yeah. Yeah, you could use the little Alberta spruce. You bet. You bet. Yeah. Vinca, they would be using your vinca in there too. And that blooms kind of that little purple flower in the fall and the spring. So yeah, we could definitely adapt. In the summer, you have a lot more options. But now it's fall and winter. Yay. Yes, sir.
Well, I don't follow the grubs in the garden. When I treat with grubs and that's why you glue the pots, or somewhere.
I always used to think grubs weren't a problem in containers until one year we had calabacoas in a container, and I went, one day I was walking by, I'm like, what is wrong with that thing? And I kind of brushed the top of it, and it just, because it didn't have any roots. There were grubs in there eating the roots. So I don't think there's any harm in treating. I would not be careful if you're using edibles, not edibles, plants you can eat. Be careful because you don't want to use grub killer. You have to be very careful on the grub killer you use with these guys. Right. So, any other questions? You guys have been great. We have a ton of new pansies with some nice, really pretty fall colors. Where'd that one go that I had? Anyways, some really cool colors down there. Oranges, reds, pinks, violets, blues. Really cool colors on those. Snapdragons. We have a nice selection of those and our fall veggies. So
I might
take your
mention
time.
too for folks online, you might pick up your fertilizer now to fertilize the next month. But take
Yeah.
advantage of the rain. This is like a huge opportunity
That
to
is
do
true.
your
So
fall
if you
feeding right now.
all-purpose fertilizer, it's great for lawns, trees, shrubs. Today is the perfect day. Run out in between rains and throw your fertilizer down. That way you're not trying to water. It just automatically works in. Yes.
This area earlier in the year.
Uh-huh. Sure. Uh-huh.
Do you fertilize close to the tree or out at the ribbon line?
I try to get as far out close to the
Repeat
group
Question
line.
for those folks.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So she's asking where to fertilize. If you're doing big trees, where do you put the fertilizer? You try to get it just inside that line area because that's where all your feeder roots are. The roots that are going to pull that in are further out. So it's not going to do you as much good close up, but get it as far as you can. The other question I get a lot is, I have rocks in my yard. It's okay. Just throw it on top of the rock. The rain or the moisture will move it down in, and you'll be fine.
Is fertilizing the same thing as drenching the tree?
Not in my opinion. So is fertilizing the same thing as drenching? In my opinion, no. I guess it depends on what you're drenching for. But fertilizing is you're feeding the roots, feeding the tree, you're feeding the soils. Fall is an excellent time to feed. Drenching, in my mind, is more for insecticides and things like that. But what do you mean by drenching?
Drenched, and I have a variety of trees, but it wasn't clarified if it was for insect. It was
Right.
station many times, but
Yeah.
they have not been kept up with. So
Sure.
I'm assuming it's with the wrong thing.
So
Talk to
fertilizing,
me after the class.
yeah, it's kind of, we've got both products. The one I would worry about right now is fertilizing.
Thank you.
Yes. It's a 555 starter fertilizer in the potting soil. Then I used our all-purpose because the all-purpose, I used it as directed. You see it, I didn't go crazy with it. But this is slow release. So this is going to feed for about 3 months. This is the meat and potatoes, the heavy. I'm going to feed from this for a long time. This is that energy drink, the Monster, energy drinks. This gives them all a boost. So they're both fertilizers, but we're going to use them a little differently. You guys have been terrific. I appreciate you coming today. Thank you. If you have questions, I'm here. Tim's here. You can tag anyone of us. Huh? If you wanted a pot, you can bring a pot. We'll help you put something together if you want.